Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's HR Summit. My name is Sarah, and I'll be your moderator for today. We're going to get started in just a moment, but first, I'd like to go over some quick information. A quick reminder of some of the benefits that come with your annual subscription. You get live web meetings, which I assume you know about because you're attending one right now. However, if you ever are unable to attend live, we do record and upload these for viewing whenever is convenient for you. Get to know your other members. You can log in to see profiles, and we're glad to make any introductions. If you are wrestling with key issues or decisions, we strongly encourage you to reach out to other members. It's very easy to post questions, and our community of fellow professionals is always happy to help. After each meeting, we generate summaries with key takeaways and learning nuggets so you can easily reference them and put them into action. There are many other benefits, but I just wanted to highlight a few. If at any time you have a question, click anywhere on the slide and post it under comments. I'll open the forum for live questions at the end of the presentation. But now, let me introduce Scott Haag. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Cornerstone Staffing with more than 20 years' experience providing strategic workforce solutions. Let me pull up his slides, and then I will turn the floor over to Scott to discuss the battle for talent in 2021. Take it away, Scott.
Good to go. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the introduction there, and I'm excited about being on the call today and having an opportunity to kind of talk about some of this stuff. It's something I'm absolutely passionate about. I love the opportunity to talk about talent whenever I get the chance. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that today, and looking forward to going over some of the stuff. So just a little bit about me and kind of who I am. I am the COO at Cornerstone Staffing here in Omaha, Nebraska. We do most of our work in kind of this Omaha area, but regionally. We are doing some stuff in Oregon and Washington and Mississippi and Florida and several other states as well too. And as you'll find out, it's because there's a lot of virtual recruiting and virtual opportunities in our space, and also talk about how we're going about doing that from a sourcing and recruiting perspective. So our kind of main focus is started in kind of the accounting and finance space, worked into a little bit more of the administrative, clerical, and some of the customer service type roles. We morphed to include light industrial here a couple of years ago, and quite honestly, really kind of saved our bacon this last year with all the changes. And we were certainly in 2021, as we're looking forward and as we look back at 2020, the supply chain side of things actually was something that stayed busy while some of the other areas had slowed down. So we've just recently added the coaching and talent consulting as well too, and we're excited about that for moving forward, and that'll come up in conversation a little bit as well too. So why staffing? Why did I choose staffing, and kind of what was the thought process around that piece? And it's pretty simple, really. I went to college like a lot of us I think do out of high school. That's kind of what was expected of me. Both of my parents were teachers. Headed that direction. I soon found out the college was weird about like you showing up to class and stuff because it wasn't something I was doing, unfortunately. And so I got kicked out after year one. Went to a community college for a little while, for about a year and a half. Did well there because they were a little bit more in my face about coming to class. And then I thought, well, I got this thing figured out. Now I'll go back to university. I went back and only lasted a semester that time because they still had the same rules about showing up to class, and I was choosing not to. So long story short, I had a buddy call me and said, hey, I've been doing this staffing thing for a year with a company called Labor Ready. I think it's something we could do. So I thought, well, you know what? It's young. I'm young. Let's give it a shot, And so that's kind of how I got my start. And I still, to this day, remember handing a check over to an individual on that first day, and it $46.25. I'll never forget it. The look on that gentleman's face, and the satisfaction it brought from that and helping someone find that gainful employment, I'll never forget it. And I was hooked from that instant. And so finding someone that gainful employment and helping someone in that space and being able to work with people, loved it, hooked me, and that's all she wrote. And so here we are today, and I've got since '96, 20 plus years of experience in the recruiting and staffing world, and I am definitely excited about that space. So if we can go to the next slide. My presentation is showing that it's ended. Sarah, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm not sure why it did that. See if it'll just let you refresh and it should show up. It did the same thing to me. Not sure what's going on, but it's back online.
Got it. As we're kind of doing, good news is I have a copy in front of me, so I'll try to reload that as well too. But first things first, we're kind of getting back into the talent strategy part of things, and how do we set up how we're going to start looking at 2021. If we would have had this conversation 10 months ago, 11 months ago, we would have been talking about something potentially different in a lot of regards, right? A lot has changed in what happened in 2021, and as we're looking into 2021 for moving forward. So when we talk about kind of that talent strategy and how we're going to do recruiting and developing and then retaining that talent, what does that look like? What are the things that are important for kind of moving forward? So, companies no longer get to look at it just like a business and to making a profit. There's so many other pieces to that puzzle now, and how do they make a societal difference? Especially during kind of these times of hardship and these social and political polarized times. And so employees are looking at companies a little bit differently. They want their companies to be doing more, and certainly with actions and not just words. So we're asking a lot of companies from a flexible work schedule perspective, a safe office working environment, training, mental health support in some cases. So really and truthfully, that has changed, and the landscape has changed pretty dramatically. So, our workers are expecting companies to keep their facilities clean, and they're maintaining safe working conditions. So when a job seeker's out there looking for and evaluating jobs, they want to know about the safety of the work environment, maybe even more so than an opportunity for professional growth in some cases, because that's the immediate or that's the present for them right now. So as we talk about kind of that dispersed and decentralized workforce, right, this is a different world for us now as well too, right? We've got, because of the pandemic, individuals that are working much more remotely. And I'll be the first to admit, we were woefully underprepared to have people working remotely. And with a lot of the clients that we work with, that was the case for a lot of people. And we've got now, we've got people and talent that are being sought out in some of our, what we would classify as maybe second-tier cities or smaller communities like the Austins and Denvers. They're booming because right now more than half of the 100 largest metropolitan areas are actually seeing an increased interest in living in suburbs. And so now, to save money on real estate and meeting the needs of the employees, you got a lot of these companies that are certainly a lot more open to a remote workforce, but also now they're a lot more decentralized because of it. So that's been a big change as well too. That workforce or workplace, kind of the hybrid model. When we talk about opportunities, a hybrid model kind of allows for a little bit more structure or stability in the office in relation to independence and flexibility as well too from those that potentially work at home, right? I think there was a survey out there, and there was 70 to 72%, I think it was, that said, hey, they wanted some sort of a hybrid remote office working model. Sodexo is a great example. I read where they had split their workforce into a Team A, Team B, type of a scenario where they would switch off between office and remote work. So it created a little bit safer space because there's less people in the office space, but that also allowed individuals to embrace some remote work as well too. So they're going to be embracing that for moving forward into 2021, and that's becoming more of a permanent model for them. So when we talk about diversity, in the workplace and the commitment by companies to do so, there is 70% of job seekers that say, hey, they want to work for a company that demonstrates a commitment to diversity and inclusion. There's obviously been a major shift surrounding diversity, and many companies, large companies, have made major, public pledges to their key stakeholders, and they're going to allocate resources to address workplace inequality. So it's something that's absolutely going to be affecting 2020 from a recruitment perspective for sure. And you hear a lot of words about reskilling or upskilling is a word I like to use in relation to our current workforce. COVID-19 obviously it disrupted the global economy, and it really, what it did from a skills perspective is it drove an even larger skills gap in there. And while there's been an increase in job automation, that's really kind of catalyzed that demand for some of this retraining. And as some of these things are shifting from a business and economic perspective, it's requiring the skills to do those jobs to shift as well too. So I saw a report from Gartner that said really only 16% of new hires possess the skills needed for their current jobs and the jobs for that future. And another study validated that workers, about 78% of them, believe the pandemic has actually increased the need for companies to support their educational needs, right, to help them grow in that space as well too. So it's kind of a both sides of the fence perspective from a company and from an employee perspective, from an expectation and from a demand perspective. Skills gap was already there. We've, with this pandemic, increased that skills gap, unfortunately. I did read where CEO of Microsoft had talked about kind of that impact on COVID-19 and really what it did from an adoption perspective of technology and the advancement of. And I touched on it before, how I said we were woefully underprepared to have people be working from home. We didn't have the technology to do that. We didn't have the ability to allow them to do that aside from their mobile phones, right? And so we were not efficient, we were not effective until we got that up to speed. We did it in record time. And that's kind of what he's talking about is that companies, we had probably 2 years of advancements from a technology perspective in like a 2-month time period because we had to do it. Like we didn't have the option. And here we sit. It's a good thing from that perspective, but it's a tough one because people were forced into improving that technology. If we can go to the next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about the recruiting and talent acquisition side of things, and I kind of mentioned earlier. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. This is such an interesting place, right? And having great recruiters at your company, or companies maybe that you work with that have great recruiters and sourcers of talent, it makes life a lot easier. But it's also the lifeblood of companies in relation to, obviously new talent and bringing people in to fit with your company, whether that's via culture or skills and those kind of things. And I have this little good news, bad news thing up there, because there is some great news in that, because of technology and the things that we utilize, it is going to, for us, for moving forward, it make it so much easier to find people and find that talent, right? It's easier than ever from that perspective. With our current situation from a pandemic perspective, some of these passive candidates, which are essential to you finding the right talent for these high-skill, high-demand jobs, they're more reluctant than ever to make that change. And they're nervous because of the stability maybe they have with their current company. They're nervous to make that change. So easier to find them, tougher to get them to make a decision to make a change. And the other kind of win here, and we talk about it next here, is that candidates do expect more remote work and that flexibility. Well, the win in that is if we're able to accommodate those things, that creates or gives us the opportunity for a more diverse workforce, right? You could potentially hire outside of your local area into a more of a regional area, which allows for the possibility of a more diverse workforce for your company, right? So the win in that is your ability to be flexible creates an opportunity for some diversity, which is something that I think we're all striving for as we're kind of moving forward as well too. If you could go to the next slide, please. We're going to talk a little bit about, and I know there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm trying to do it to where I can pass along some of this information, but also not like just bombing a ton of information as well too. So I kind of saved some of the tools and some of those things for the end, and I assume everyone gets a copy of this, or if not, when we get to the tools thing, break out your phone and take a little screenshot or something, because there's some valuable tools, I think, for kind of moving forward. But one of the important things as we're kind of moving into 2021 and has been in already in 2020 as well too is creating a sourcing strategy. Like how do we do that? Where are we finding these candidates? How does that look for kind of moving forward? And I think one of the important things is we've got to identify your goals, right? Your talent sourcing strategy has to derive from your overall business plan and kind of those long-term company goals. The first step, obviously, in that is kind of identifying what are the future employment requirements of the business, and what are kind of the crucial components of creating this sustainable recruitment sourcing strategy, right? What are ultimately our goals for long term? What are we trying to do in defining that, right? If we define the talent that we're targeting, then whether that's whether you're basing it on specific skill sets or personas or job descriptions or internal versus external, whatever that looks like, defining that will kind of help drive that sourcing strategy. And like I said earlier, I've got some great tools, and we'll talk about how that looks a little bit. But first things first, do we have a defined sourcing strategy as far as who are we trying to target from a talent perspective? And then, of course, it is where do we find those candidates? And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well too. The virtual hiring process is obviously become an important part of what we're doing from a recruiting sourcing perspective. I put in there, it's kind of back to the basics, and there's some real truth to that, because we had this opportunity to do these usual in-person touch points during a hiring process. And so we didn't have to sell the job in some regards. And we have to get back into making sure that we're asking the right questions, and we need to what we really should have been doing all along is making sure that we have a very repeatable, smart hiring process that really does rely on qualifications and those kind of things versus maybe some of that gut feeling you can have in a personal conversation or interview. That kind of has to change, and people coming to the office and hanging out or shadowing and those things have for the most part kind of gone by the wayside in a lot of positions, and so that virtual hiring process obviously has to be very something that is definitely defined and something that is a repeatable process for sure. And that kind of leads into this next little space where we're talking about that sales pitch, right? How do we talk to these individuals, and now we're having to create kind of a mental picture of our locations, the work sites, versus them having the ability to come to the office in some cases. So if people are working from home, a great stocked fridge or an awesome snack room or something like that just doesn't hold the same weight, obviously, as it did back in the day, right? So we as recruiters, they have to make pitches that are based on other things like expanded benefits or the home office setup and how that looks, or have you brought on new child care stipends, or do you have other wellness benefits? Those things have to be brought to the forefront. And now you're creating this mental picture and have to convey this culture of the company just from a more creative perspective. So it's changed how we're having conversations and the way that we're quote unquote selling our company to our potential candidates. So, the obvious thing we're talking about as well too is this nationwide conversation around systemic racism and inequality, and the employers are having to consider, hey, what are we doing from a diversity and inclusion? What are the efforts we're making as an employer? And larger companies in a lot of cases are hiring specialists to help them either develop or create plans and execute on those. Small to mid-sized companies maybe don't have some of those, or don't have the bandwidth or the ability to do that, and so they're getting creative with partnering with other companies. Or we kind of talked about part of the reason why we brought on the talent portion of our business, the coaching and talent consulting piece, was so that we could help in our community from a small to mid-sized business perspective and help develop diversity and inclusion plans and help them execute where they don't have some of the capabilities or expertise in that space, or just the ability to execute a plan like that because they just don't have the bandwidth for that. But it's such an important part for our recruiters play such an important part, especially in a corporate perspective, in making sure that, hey, employers, we have to pay attention to our Glassdoors and our LinkedIn's, those reviews, and a lot of our potential candidates nowadays, that's where they're going. They're doing the research long before they ever fill out an application or have a conversation with a recruiter or a hiring manager, and they're doing their homework. They're doing the work, and they're out there looking and seeing. And if we're not walking the walk, it'll find its way on to one of those pages. It's an important part of what we do for moving forward. And the real struggle right now is are we represented from a leadership perspective in a diverse way, and that tends to be where we have some struggles as companies overall right now. And so how do we continue to move forward in that space? It's something that's obviously an important part of 2021 and what that looks like. Next slide, please. Sourcing, near and dear to my heart. We talked about that earlier. There's like I could talk about this stuff for hours, so I'm going to do my best to make sure I'm cognizant of time and aware of that. But source, if you do nothing else for your recruiters or the people that are working in that talent acquisition space, have them go to YouTube or have them reach out to a subject matter expert. Boolean search is really that's the basics of recruiting and sourcing, right? And understanding how to use those Boolean operators and write Boolean expressions, it may be one of the greatest tools you'll have ever in talent sourcing. Because the thing about it is there's even tools to help you write the stuff too, and that'll be in the toolkit later as well too. But there are some different programs that you can use that'll actually write the expressions for you. But it's a way for you to get as granular as you want or as widespread as you want to source the talent that you're looking for, whether that's specific to a job or maybe a little more generalized from a company perspective. But it is the single most important thing in my mind from a sourcing perspective that you can get good at. If you get good at nothing else, get good at being a Boolean searcher for sure. There are other ways, obviously, to grab and pull and source individuals. There's diversity recruiting, which is obviously an important thing for us for moving forward, and could be, but continues to come to the forefront, which I'm a fan of. We've created a search engine that's specific to diversity recruiting. It's in the toolkit. We'll go over that right there at the end as well too. But it's a link. All you have to do is put it into your browser. It'll pull up and through Google, a Google search, but it allows you to. And it's even kind of hard for me to explain. You'll have to do the site yourself. But it's a specific link where you go in and you can put in exactly what you're looking for from a position perspective, and it is going to pull diverse candidates for you to consider for those roles. So it's a great tool, something super easy to use because it's already been written for you. You just have to plug it into your search bar. So. Or your browser bar, sorry. Local talent, here for us, local talent, our professional groups in our area, and I'm sure many of you are already either chamber members or you're a member of your chapter for talent development, or maybe a great one for us on the technical side is AITP here, which is Association of Information Technology Professionals. That's great for our IT recruiting. So there's really good local groups. And so when I say local talent, it just talks about making sure that we go to Google on a regular basis and we're literally looking up professional groups in Omaha, Nebraska, for instance. And that's where we find these new groups. And either we're part of it because it's a great networking opportunity, but it's obviously a great sourcing possibility as well too. So look for your local groups. Meetups, I put it on there hesitantly because I'm not sure when that happens again, but hopefully one day it'll happen again where we get to actually go out and be part of some of these groups and get an opportunity to meet with individuals. So that always stays on our radar when the time is a little bit different because it's great to go out and shake hands and get an opportunity to either contribute with areas of expertise or to just meet individuals and get referrals and those kind of things. Databases, knowing them is an important piece because that's a great place to pull information as well too. Here, our libraries, public and university as well too, they have great information. They have a consumer database that runs through the public library, and many do in other regions of the country as well too. Has great information about individuals and companies that utilize the same type of talent. And when you're talking about sourcing, right, you find people that do like business, And if you're really truthfully trying to source for passive candidates, you're looking for those types of businesses. So that's where you go. The health grades, that's from a medical practitioner perspective. They give names and workplaces. For instance, a Guide Star is another one that handles all your nonprofit organizations. So you get to see key leaders in there. And for all of you out there, your local county assessor's office gives contact information for free, right? So it's the crazy thing about sourcing is it's all this amazing information out there. It's also slightly terrifying, right? I mean, like the fact that you can find this information is, it is a little frightening. And it's, you want a home email, you want, a cell phone. It's out there. All the information is there. It's just like, where do you look for it? So, while I like it from a recruiting perspective, as a person, makes me a little nervous. I'm not going to lie, but it's absolutely there. Facebook, that the sourcing in there changes pretty dramatically over the years, but there are some great tools inside of Facebook to find individuals, and that'll be in the toolbox as well too. But there's just some regular platform searches. There's an X-ray search that allows you to get super granular. That's a great tool because it utilizes Boolean search inside of Facebook and works through Google. So I've got the link for that. That's a super easy one to utilize. And the cool thing about this stuff is there's all kinds of YouTube tutorials for these things as well too. We'll give you some of the tools, and gathering some additional how-tos on some of it is easy to find as well too. So, and then of course there's sourcing tools like that are specific to, hey, I'm going to type in machine operator, and this machine operator is going to pull up 100 employees within a 20-mile radius that are machine operators, and aggregating that information for you. And I listed a couple of tools that I'm aware of that have good reputation in the sourcing world. So when you go about looking for something like this, you do want to make sure you're asking, where they're getting their data, how the automation features work inside of that. Will it work well with your ATS, your applicant tracking system? Is that something you can pull into the system you already have? And then you want to make sure you have a good understanding of how they leverage the social, recruiting as a part of the strategy. Is it utilizing social media channels for the recruiting? Those are the kind of questions you want to ask from a sourcing tool perspective. There's some really cool tools out there. Same thing I told you before. How it pulls all this information, it's yanking it from hundreds of different sites to aggregate it all together and then give you that final product blows me away. But it's there, and from a sourcing perspective, utilizing something like that can increase your talent pool pretty dramatically. So next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit now about the development side of things, and you see those famous words, reskilling, upskilling, kind of coming across again as well too, and in that I think this is an area where if you look into 2021 and beyond, if you can get on this thought process, if you can get in and you can start reskilling and upskilling your current talent base, and you can get ahead of the curve, so to speak, I think it gives companies that can kind of unlock this upskilling at a high speed and at scale. Right now, I think it would give you an absolute. You would leave your competitors behind. It's something that definitely takes some time, effort, and energy to develop these learning and development programs to help upskill and reskill your workforce. But if you can do it now and you can do it well, you can leave your competitors in the dust from that perspective. And it changes the landscape of your workforce from a turnover perspective, from a high cost of hiring as well too. So when we talk about that, obviously first things first, you have to assess and develop and deliver some sort of an effective learning experience, and that's I kind of giggle about that a little bit because it's kind of like this good and bad perspective is that you're saying, hey, we need to create this thing here, and it's the awesome thing is yeah, if we can create this really good learning and development program, we're ahead of the game. The complicated part of that is you have to create a learning and development program that addresses all these issues and helps grow your or upskill your talent base. It's a massive undertaking. There's no way to sugarcoat that. That's something that, especially for small to mid-sized businesses, is a hard thing to do to create these programs and then have them effectively and consistently being driven throughout the company. So why there are other companies out there to kind of help in that space, but it's an important part of moving forward because jobs are definitely changing with automation and with technology for moving forward. How do we help the people that we already have that we know are a good culture fit? How do we help those individuals move into some of these new positions? And then I think there's always there's a lot of myths on the back end of, hey, we did these or we did create some programs, we got some help creating, however that part of things looked and how you got something done from a development perspective. We don't go back and then evaluate that and measure that and say, hey, how did this impact us, right? Did we actually go back and say, hey, those of the employees that participated, what was their view? Was the training favorable? Was it engaging for them? Was it relevant for them? And how did these participants learn? Did they get the intended knowledge we were looking to give? Did it help improve the skills? I think we often do these things and then forget to go back and assess, were they able to apply what they learned to their actual job for moving forward or to a new job for moving forward? And, were these targeted outcomes, were they achieved? And I think that's a real opportunity for us is maybe some of us are doing some of these things in training and developing, but do we have a really good idea of, hey, is it achieve the desired outcomes that we wanted? So it's an important part, definitely for sure. Next slide, please. Thank you, Sarah. So retention, that's a whole nother world too. And LinkedIn did a survey. They do this annual workplace learning report, and they came up with 94% of employees said, hey, they would stay at a company longer if it invested in their professional development, right? And we just talked about this a second ago and said, hey, well, the simple answer to that is hey, put in a great learning and development program. The complicated side of that, or the complex side of that is you need an effective learning and development program, right? So we kind of just talked about that. That's the thing. We know it's a necessity. It's how do we develop and create, and then how do we execute? That's the challenge for moving forward. A question I know we ask ourselves often, and everyone's heard the, hey, people leave managers and not companies, and that speaks to the next point, right? Do we have the right leaders in place? And there's different ways to check and say, hey, is that true, right? We can use anonymous feedback tool to say, is this true? How do we feel about our managers, and ask for feedback that way, and um, the myth in a lot of cases is that maybe we gather this information, but are we acting on those employees' concerns so that they're comfortable to continue to give feedback for for kind of moving forward? And managers and management affect how engaged our employees are, and really therefore how likely are they to then stay at our company. So it's an old saying, but it's still holds true to today. And we always come back to this evaluating, or at least I do. It's like I'm constantly evaluating how we're doing different programs and helping companies do that as well too. One of which is the onboarding process, and that it's something that gets overlooked on a regular basis because it's something that a lot of companies kind of consider as a throwaway to some degree from a responsibility perspective, and it a lot of times will get sacrificed to kind of, oh well, we've got business as usual, right? We had to take this call, or we had to take this meeting, or whatever, because that's the business side of things, and then we forego a consistent process from an onboarding perspective. And so there's nothing more frustrating than hiring somebody and then 3 months down the road or 6 months down the road, they're gone. And we obviously like the person, right? The hiring managers and the stakeholders and ourselves, we all said, hey, this is a great hire. And then we lose them. And what was the reason behind that, right? But, with a poor or maybe even a non-onboarding process, right, there's a much higher turnover rate, right? There's lower productivity is something else that pops up a lot too, right, when we don't have an onboarding process or a poor one. So how do we create a program that integrates these new employees into the company culture, and how do we make it consistent for all of our new hires? So that's it always goes hand in hand with the recognition and work-life balance and flexibility and stuff as well too, right? Because you get a lot of people that say they would. I think Gallup ran a poll, and 66% of employees said they would quit their job if they felt underappreciated. Well, the crazy part of that is the flip side of it. It was the other percent. 65% of that 66 said they do feel unappreciated, right, at their job. And so, how do we improve employee recognition? I think to succeed, you have to have some sort of an initiative that is consistent, obviously sincere, but organic to you, right? There's a lot of cookie cutters. Not saying that some of those wouldn't work for us, but if it feels organic or designed specific to you and your company, it's received well. And then having that public acknowledgement, whether that's, it used to be in-person events, not so much anymore. Maybe it's an internal network or something along those lines, for instance. But having some acknowledgement for individuals, I think, is important as well too. So that's an important part. And then the flexibility we talked about before, the ability to have the opportunity maybe to work at home, or to maybe have that combined one where they get maybe some at home, some at work, kind of a thing. But that flexibility goes a long way for sure. Sarah, next slide, please. Good news, we're at the tools piece. I was afraid I want to make sure I pick up the pace here a little bit. But so the next 3 slides here is really and truthfully, it just is the tools side of thing. I talked about that custom search engine there. That literally is the link. If you use that, you can actually, it'll pull up a link for you to utilize, and then you can do some searching right in there. And you'll see when you pull it up, because it at the top of the page, it's going to give you a lot of options to search for individuals in that space. So when you take a look at that, it'll become a little bit more clear. But that absolutely is the link. The professional groups we talked about within your city, the database. I just listed some of those that I had talked about earlier. that I can't express enough how much information online that the public and the university libraries have. You got to go check those out for sure. Next slide, please. Facebook, we talked about that. So inside of Facebook, there's so many options inside of Facebook, but People Finder and the searches back, those work intermittently. You'll have to try them because they may work today, they may not work tomorrow. It's kind of a every other day kind of a thing because Facebook changes the rules of play like all the time. When those work, fantastic tools for finding individuals, and they'll pull up the information directly to you. The platform search is just simply in the search bar itself there, and then you just choose the people tab. The X-ray search, that's my fave. That one allows for a very granular search. So I just gave you an example, right? So if you put in the quotations, because it's a Boolean search essentially, is this registered nurse, Omaha, because obviously that's where I'm at, but full-time position, public, and pages, it will pull up amazing information for you. So it'll actually give you the individual's name. It's obviously going to be coming from Facebook, but it'll give you the individual that fits that criteria. And obviously, the shorter that is, the wider your search will become, right? The more information you put in there, the smaller. So you can get as granular as you want or as large as you want as well too. If you've never done the X-ray search inside of Facebook or your team hasn't from a recruiting perspective, pass that along to them and let them play around with it. I promise you'll find talent in that space. Contact information, that's just a place where you can actually like literally find the contact information, whether that's like a Gmail or a cell phone or something along those lines for individuals as well too. And those are free search engines. If you're utilizing Chrome as your web browser, there's some extensions. And there's a YouTube video there that I linked, or that you can link to, and that'll show you how to add and manage the extensions. But that's a fantastic tool as well too to utilize. That Hunter.io that you see there, that helps you find individuals' work emails, which is a cool tool to have. Depends, especially if you're in business development. But can you go to the next slide, Sarah? And then the last one, I gave you a couple of examples of some social media aggregators that will help from a contact information as well too. Swordfish is a big one. They do a lot. That'll pull information from LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Stack Overflow, Google Search, Gmail, like big. And then JobJet in Hire Tool, those are they'll do less, but they're going to pull from the some of the majors like the LinkedIn's and the Googles and those kind of things as well too. And then I track individuals and websites and those kind of things. And there's some great websites to follow from a sourcing perspective that you can share with the team because there's great information that comes out. Things have changed so much in the last 12 months, and we're anyway, right? If you're not searching and sourcing passive candidates, right, it's going to be hard to be successful for moving forward. And so it's such an important part of what we do for moving forward that if you get information or you keep up on some of the new information, you're going to be put in a better place to be successful for kind of moving forward as we're all fighting for talent in 2021. So the more information you gather, the more on top of the new ways of finding talent and bringing talent in, the better served we are. So there's a lot of great groups in your areas. I'm sure here we do a really good job, I think, of helping one another with new techniques and trades. And yes, I'm in the staffing business and that's my job and those kind of things, but I'm also a part of this community. And so we work well together to help each other stay abreast of new things that are coming out and helping one another, because there's always opportunities to serve. So that's kind of the goal, and at least in our community, from that perspective. And I think that's it. That's a lot of stuff, and I know sometimes it's hard to get it all right and to talk about a lot. There's so many other things to add into this. I tried to kind of give a little bit of a dive, but also try to keep it high level to some degree. But I hope you hear it in my voice. I'm super passionate about this stuff, and I love just the life cycle of that source to hire and through that entire process. So that's it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you so much, Scott. We have got a couple questions in, and let me start with them. Okay. First one is, as COVID seems to have no end in sight and we continue to virtually hire, do you see a disparity or issue with COVID-hired staff who made great remote, virtually based employees, but maybe not a good in-person, team-based employee?
Yeah, that's actually an excellent question, and the truth is we don't know. Right? We don't. There's not enough information out there yet, because it's been the same the other way. Right? We've had some amazing people working for our clients in office, and have struggled in their remote locations without some of the structure they were used to. So I think the jury's still out on that. We don't know yet. We're obviously going to get a little bit better idea. Certainly in our region, we've had more people that are coming back into the workspace, and so we're probably closer to 50-50 in our area with a lot of our companies. So more to come. I think by first quarter of this next year, maybe late first quarter, we'll have some more information to share with that.
Excellent. All right. Everybody, if you do have questions, please feel free to click on the slide anywhere, or if you'd like to ask your question live, you can hit *6 on your phone. Again, that is *6. And let's see. Angela, I saw that you asked for expansion on something, but I was wondering if you had a specific question for Scott. I'm not sure if you're still with us. Alrighty, well, it looks like that is it for the questions. So, Scott, do you have a parting statement you want to give, or?
I just thank you for having me today. I hope this helps, even if you get one little piece, or you utilize one of those tools, or share with team. I hope it helps. I'm always open to, like I say, I'm super passionate about this stuff. I love it. I'm happy to talk about this stuff ad nauseam. I'm sure for some people, but if I can be of service or help of any way, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm an open book when it comes to these things.
Well, that is phenomenal. Thank you so much. And Scott, especially, thank you for taking the time. And everyone who's listening, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. I hope you enjoyed the talk as much as I did. Don't forget to check the website in a few days if you'd like to listen to this or any of our previous discussions. And hope to hear from you next month. And thank you all again.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
You are about to end this meeting. To end, press 1. To return to the meeting, press 0. You're the only person still in the meeting. You can hang up or stay on the line to start a
Yeah, bye. Okay. Thanks for